All right. It is November 4th, 2021, which means it is officially my favorite month of the calendar year. The college football playoff rankings have been released. Myself, Miles on Sports, Mr. Brad Thomas, we are releasing our very own top 10 today. How are we feeling overall about what we've seen from the committee so far?
I've had so much fun back on Twitter, just laughing at everyone's reactions and laughing at the committee. I think that I'm in this college football forum, and we knew it was going to be a crap show. Like, we just knew it was going to be a very big crap show. And I said before the rankings come out, the rankings this early are almost pointless unless you're a team like Cincinnati, because Cincinnati's not losing for the rest of the season. So if they're in the top four, they pretty much have a guaranteed spot. But teams like Oklahoma, who have a really tough road ahead, and if they go undefeated, they're probably gonna be number 2 in the country. So there's a lot of wait and see. But as a Bama guy, I'll tell you something, man. I was shocked. I was very shocked that we were number 2.
Yeah, I mean, it really comes down to this SEC thing, right? That everyone keeps talking about. And we've got Georgia at 1, and we got Bama at 2. Cincinnati, as you said, it really just gives them an idea of what does the committee think of us? We've been talking about it for weeks, right?
Yep.
Cincinnati may be number 2 in the AP poll, and that's fine and dandy, but there's no way in hell that the committee was going to ever rank Cincinnati in the top 4. It was never going to happen. So I just don't understand all the outcry. We knew the system that we're playing in, right? I mean, by now, you have to know, what are we now, 7 years into this thing? You know the system that you're playing in now, and this thing is not going to change until expansion. And even expansion doesn't guarantee that it eliminates biases and opens the opportunity for a group of 5. I mean, I want to get into this group of 5, Power 5, conversation again, but let's get right into it. Let's go ahead and start. Let's go one by one. Give me your number 10.
My number 10, I have Notre Dame. I think that's a totally fair ranking for them. They've won the games they've needed to, especially the big win against USC. And people might not think that's a big win, but USC had them down to the ropes and they came out victorious.
Yeah, I have Notre Dame just outside my top 10. I actually, at 10 and 9, I got 2 teams from the Big 12. And I want to talk about the Big 12 for a second, is that if you're looking at the SEC and the Big 12 right now, the Big 12 has an undefeated Oklahoma and 2 one-loss teams in Baylor and Oklahoma State. The SEC is sitting with an undefeated Georgia, a 1-loss Bama, and then 2 lost teams. No one's talking about the Big 12 and how they actually have 3 very strong teams here. I'll tell you, Baylor has been really impressive the last 3 weeks. Wins against BYU, wins against Texas, West Virginia. Their only loss of the year to Oklahoma State. I've got Baylor in my top 10 at number 10.
That's totally fair. When I saw that, they're 12. When I saw Baylor was 12, I thought that was interesting, but it was, the top 10 was tough for me, and I had to honor Notre Dame there.
All right, who's 9?
Number 9, I have Michigan. I mean, they've done well, but they still are lacking that explosive offense that I would put higher. And I think that a part of me just wanted to punish them for blowing a lead like that. When you want to be a championship caliber team, you don't blow, 15 points in the final 5 minutes of the game. You don't blow leads like that. And you don't let a guy run for 200 yards and 5 touchdowns.
Tough loss for Michigan, man. I mean, it looked like they had that in hand, and it looked like we knew exactly what we were going to see from Michigan.
Yep.
And until the game just got broken open by Kenneth Walker. I mean, it was that Michigan State game was wild, but Michigan and Harbaugh, you want to talk about games he's let get away. That was a big one.
Big one.
At number 9 for me, another Big 12 team, I got Oklahoma State. Now, what I will say is that Oklahoma State does have their only loss to an unranked Iowa State team. I don't like that, but we're still looking at a 1-loss team in what I think is a very top-heavy Big 12 conference. A win against Baylor. They got their game against Oklahoma coming up at the end of the year. Strong defense. I got Oklahoma State at 9. I'll go ahead. Yeah, go ahead.
1 second. As strong as the Big 12 is, too, we're going to see a lot of change in the top 25 and the top 10 throughout the season, because these teams are going to be playing each other and going to be getting stronger and stronger. Like, I think that Baylor's resume is going to get stronger. I think that Oklahoma State's resume is going to get stronger. Every team's going to get stronger. So when you have a win over a Baylor, you just look that much more dominant.
And hats off to Dave Aranda, by the way. I mean, I almost left the Baylor program for dead when they lost Matt Rule. But and we knew that Aranda was a good hire, but really rocky start last year. And now he's got Baylor right back in position to play for a Big 12 championship in his second year. Hats off to him for that program, because we see what's happening at TCU. My number 8, this is where I've got Oregon. I've got Oregon low. Oregon doesn't belong in my top 4. And again, Oregon, they have possibly the best win of the year against Ohio State in early September. And I know that every game matters, and I get that. But that was a very different Ohio State team that they played. CJ Stroud came out this week and said that he indeed suffered an injury in week 1. He wasn't 100%. They didn't disclose the injury. Ever since he's come back, they've been a completely different team. Oregon lost to Stanford. It's inexcusable to me. And if Oregon ends up finishing the year 13-1, I don't think they will. I still don't know. It just depends on who's there. But I'm still not going to say that I would have Oregon in my Final Four. Now, I don't think they're going to finish 13-1, but their loss against Stanford really hurts for me. For me, it does matter who you lose to. It matters who you beat too. I don't think one should have any precedent over the other. But I've got Oregon at 8.
Okay, you'll see what I think about Oregon shortly. At 8, I have Wake Forest. Had to give them a little love. Sam Hartman is playing lights out. We thought when Sam Hartman would take over, that Wake Forest would just be this dead program and Heisman candidate, Heisman hopeful. I think this is an appropriate ranking for them.
Yeah, I like what Wake Forest has done. They've definitely caught my attention. At number 7, that's where I have Michigan. I still think that they're deserving of a top 10 spot, but at this point, it's kind of hard to say who they've actually beaten. Yeah. Again, they let that one get away against Michigan State where they had the game well in hand. They were on their way to a huge road victory and an undefeated record, and Michigan State finds a way to come back and win that game. That is heart-wrenching, but I've still got Michigan in my top 10 at number 7.
All right, my number 7, and this is, and guys who are listening to this podcast, do not send me hate mail. I'm so sorry, but I have to rank them here. This is where I have Cincinnati. Listen, Miles, yes, they have the one top 10 win over Notre Dame, but Notre Dame is a borderline top 10 team. Throughout the rest of the schedule, they're playing absolutely nobody. And for me to sit here and say that they're more deserving than an Ohio State, more deserving than even an Oregon, more deserving than an Oklahoma is out of control. Yeah, they have the number 2 ranked defense in the nation. Yeah, it's easy when you're playing against Navy, who's won one game this season. It's easy when you're playing against Tulane, who is not the Tulane of old. Like, I can't bring myself to make them higher, maybe borderline 5 or 6, but I think 7's a very fair spot for them.
I'm 100% with you on that one, man. I do not have Cincinnati in my top 10, and I know that may be a little bit of an overreaction, but listen, I mean, at this point where we've seen other group of 5 teams undefeated, none have even sniffed the top 10. So all of a sudden, you want to sit there and tell me that Cincinnati is all of a sudden a top 4 team now? I mean, what about last year? Or what about UCF in 2017? What about UCF in 2018? Why weren't they a top 10 team? Why weren't they a top 5 team? They're playing the same schedule, right? So you could
argue that the AAC was stronger then too.
Yes,
this is a down year for the AAC.
Right. No doubt about that. It's a great argument to make. But at this point, it's just not strong enough. Week in and week out, you're just not playing strong enough competition. You can't tell me that one road win against a Notre Dame team who gets blown out in all of their playoff appearances you just can't tell me that one win is enough. To make you a top 4 team when you're struggling to beat Navy and Tulane on the road. It just makes no sense to me. It's nothing against what Cincinnati is building. Again, Cincinnati's done a great job of earning their opportunity. And we talk about that, right? We talk about group of 5 programs earning their opportunity. They're headed to the Big 12. They're headed to the Power 5. All right. So once you get there, then go 13-0 in the Big 12 and then talk to me.
Yes.
And how about we talk about how many times we've seen even Oklahoma go undefeated in the Big 12?
Yep.
Why does it not happen consistently? Because it's a more difficult league. It's deeper top to bottom.
Yeah.
There's not enough competition in a league like the American. Is it fair? No. This is not a fair system.
And it's just the way the cookie crumbles.
Right. The first one to say that college football is broken. It is not a fair system. The group of 5 and the Power 5 are 2 completely different leagues. Now, the good news is, hopefully we see more expansion coming up.
Yes.
The good news is that the group of 5 can feed into the Power 5 and create opportunities for those programs who have proven themselves, like a Houston and a BYU and a UCF and a Cincinnati.
It's so sad too, is like the group of 5 die hard. Look, I'm wearing the UCF shirt, repping the group of 5 today, but they think that teams like Alabama don't want expansion. Teams like Alabama, teams that SC could care less about expansion. If it happens, it happens. If it doesn't, it doesn't. You cannot sit here, Cincinnati, and tell me because they have a top 10 win, which is more than Alabama, which is more than Georgia, which is more than Ohio State, that makes them deserving of a spot when they have no no challenges throughout the entire season except one game does not make you deserving of a top 10 spot.
And Bama and Georgia and Ohio State and Oklahoma, they haven't gotten those opportunities yet. It just so happens that Cincinnati had that opportunity in that non-conference.
Yeah.
And they came away with a very impressive win. I don't take anything away from that. But as long as they are talented, one-loss Power 5 programs that are gaining my respect, like a Baylor and Oklahoma State, who have a loss in the Big 12, right? Or in Oregon, who's one. As long as they are out there, I can't rank a Cincinnati over them.
Yeah.
Now, if I start talking about 2-loss Power 5 teams, that's when I'll start considering moving those Group of 5 teams up. But you're never going to see a Group of 5 team in my top 4, and in this case, not even in my top 10.
No, absolutely not.
Okay, so let's go ahead and do our first 2 out. So we're going to do 5 and 6. So this will give us an idea of where we're at there. I'll go ahead and start. So here's where I'm at. These are my first 2 out, 2 undefeated Power 5 programs. I've got Michigan State at 5, and I've got Wake Forest at 6. You and I were just talking about this before we went live. This is my wait-and-see mentality here with my first 2 out, 5 and 6. And this is most likely where I'll keep them as long as things don't change. I think that Michigan State and Wake Forest, if they can go undefeated, I think that they would obviously be deserving of a college football playoff spot. But I don't think that they're a top 4 team right now. So I've got them at 5 and 6, but I've got them right on the cusp. And I've got them ahead of teams like, Michigan, Cincinnati, Oregon, other one-loss teams because they played their schedule and proven it.
My wait and see is a little different than yours. My wait and see is number 5, Oregon, number 6, Ohio State. And the reason I have them ranked where they are is because I think it'll work itself out. If Ohio State defeats Michigan State, they're in the top 4 regardless.
Right.
Michigan State comes down. If Oregon wins out, they're going to need a little bit of help from Ohio State to go ahead and take down Michigan and Michigan State. They might be in the top 4. It's all wait and see for me for these teams, but I think ultimately that number 5 is the sketchiest position of my rankings because Oregon wins out. Ohio State wins out. There's no way I keep Oregon ahead of Ohio State just because of the road that Ohio State has ahead.
And I like that you brought that up because I think it brings up a good point of, this Oregon ahead of Ohio State argument that everybody's been making. And this is before the rankings came out. And there were a lot of pundits. Well, we better ahead of Ohio State because Oregon beat Ohio State. I don't think head-to-head should be the end-all, be-all of our rankings.
It's not.
This entire thing is flawed. All right, so
we see Texas A&M in the top 4.
Right. Thank you. Right, exactly. So Oregon's got the loss to Stanford. Tell me which team has looked better since that Ohio State-Oregon game? Which team
Ohio
has actually
State,
made
absolutely
improvements, right? So, Ohio State didn't blow the doors off of Penn State last week, but we got Penn State's best game, and we still came away with the victory and didn't even play our best game offensively. That was the best defense Ohio State played all year and still came away with the win where I never really felt like it was in doubt. And as you said, our schedule is so backloaded.
Yeah.
But Oregon's got their opportunity as well. So the reason I say this is because obviously, I haven't said Ohio State yet. I've got them ranked ahead of Oregon. I don't think it should be the end-all. I've got Oregon at number 8.
I think that's totally fair. Like if you have Ohio State over Oregon, I believe it. But I put mine as a wait and see, and it's totally fair for you to jump a team. Like I think that the ceiling, and no disrespect for Oregon, the ceiling, unless a lot of craziness happens for Oregon, is 5. That's as high as they're going. Where Ohio State has all of this runway. 6 is just like them sitting outside with their scope, waiting to shoot down teams in front of them. And Oregon doesn't really have that liberty.
Yeah, I mean, Ohio State could end the year with wins against Michigan State, Michigan, Wisconsin. They just have the opportunities. I mean, Oregon's got that too. But again, it's a wait and see, right? So let's go ahead and get into the to the top 4. I will go ahead and go first. All right. So this is kind of how I structured this because obviously these are our first rankings of the year. So based on what we've seen, I've got the 4 teams, not in this exact order, or it might be. I can't remember. But I've got the 4 teams that I had in the playoff in the beginning of the year, and there's still nothing that I've seen where I don't think that these are the best 4 teams in the country. All right? So I've got Georgia at number 1. I've got Bama at number 2. I've got Ohio State at number 3. And I've got Oklahoma at number 4. These are the 4 teams that I think that we're going to see in the playoff. Maybe not in that order because I think Bama beats Georgia in the SEC championship. But these are the 4 teams that I've got in the playoff at the end of the year. So in my mind, I don't think my top 4 is changing.
No, I think yours is totally fair.
We will wait and see. But and listen, I wanted to do this originally based on, okay, because there's two ways to do this. What if the playoff started today? And do your actual rankings of the best teams. Because let's be real. If the playoffs started today, Michigan State and Wake Forest, you would have to put them in.
Yeah.
If if Clemson, which they have, if Clemson plays the same schedule as Wake Forest this year, exclude the Georgia game, and they're undefeated, then Clemson's like number one, right?
Yeah.
I mean, so why shouldn't Wake Forest be considered in the same way? Also keep in mind, Wake Forest has the toughest part of their schedule coming up. I believe it's North Carolina, Clemson, Boston College, and I forgot the 14. But so Wake Forest will also have a chance to earn that distinction. But if the season ended today, how do you keep Wake Forest out of the playoffs as an undefeated Power 5 team?
Especially, you said it best, that if Clemson plays that schedule, they're ranked number one.
Right.
I'll give my top four here. This has changed so many times, except with the exception of number one, Georgia. We all know that. Number two, I have Oklahoma. Number three, I have Alabama. And number four, I have Michigan State. I flirted with Michigan State at number two and number three. But listen, if I'm going to punish Cincinnati for playing no one, I cannot reward Michigan State for playing no one. And what I mean by that is Michigan State has played, one winning team all season? And that was Michigan. So I cannot put Michigan State at number two. And then for Oklahoma, they've played bad, but they're getting the wins in the Big 12, and I have to reward them for that. For Alabama, I don't have them at two because I surely think that Alabama, their loss to Texas A&M is going to look better and better as Texas A&M finishes the season. But right now, where it stands, Texas A&M is not that great of a team, although they're on a 3-game win streak and a 3-game cover streak. So we just got to see what's going to happen. But I do think that wherever I have teams ranked, it's going to work themselves out. Alabama plays Georgia in the SEC Championship. Ohio State plays Michigan State. Oklahoma plays Oklahoma State. Yeah, they have two top 15
Baylor,
matchups.
Right?
Yeah,
Oklahoma,
two top 15 matches in the back of the season. So it's going to work itself out.
Right. And you'll notice that the Power 5 conferences are kind of doing their scheduling this way on purpose, right? Because it keeps everybody near the top until we get to November, and then you can kind of start to eliminate everybody. But I think a lot of this conversation in a lot of people's rankings is, where do you have Cincinnati? But and everyone's going to have their belief. And just because you think it's right doesn't mean that it is right? This is college football. Everybody's opinion matters. But this is also why, expansion is so enticing. But I'm here to say that even if the playoff was at 8 teams, I still wouldn't have Cincy in my top 8. So,
I think that if Cincinnati were to be going a head-to-head against Georgia, if they'd be the number, let's say it's an 8 seed and they're the 8th seed, they're number one, it would be an 18.5 point spread.
I was just about to say 17, 18 point spread for Georgia. I mean, that's what you're looking at. You put Cincinnati up against Alabama, it's going to be double digits. Ohio State, double digits.
Yeah. We're not giving them kudos because they beat a bad Indiana team. Like, I'm just sick of people saying they have 2 Power 5 wins. Yeah, sure. What are the next are we gonna start celebrating wins over Vanderbilt?
Right. How many Power 5 wins does Oklahoma have? And they're behind Cincinnati right now.
Yes, exactly.
Oklahoma ranked behind Cincinnati right now.
That's so gross.
So I just can't. And one thing I will say about this podcast, What's the Spread, is that we have been adamant about our beliefs for years, talking about this Group of 5, Power 5 designation. It's nothing against the Group of 5.
Not at all.
About, building your program and all about getting in, but not into the college football playoff, because that's where the elite programs belong. If there's only 4 teams, if there's 8, maybe we can talk about it. Maybe we can talk about giving that one spot, but not in a 14 playoff. There's just too many other talented teams.
Way too many. Just doesn't make sense.
All right, I think we rambled long enough about our rankings. I can't wait to do it again next week. Let's go ahead and get to the games, all right?
All right. So the first game we got, tell us what we got.
Yeah, so we got one ranked game this week, which we'll get to. But, hey, I thought we would start with College Game Day. Speaking of the Cincinnati Bearcats, Tulsa at Cincinnati. Cincinnati, 22.5-point favorites. College Game Day going to Cincinnati for the first time. What great timing for our Cincinnati Bearcats to have a spotlight game. What are we thinking for this one?
This is such a joke. Like, there were so many good opportunities for game day throughout the season, and then they find this game.
It couldn't have been SMU in a couple weeks.
I know, right? Like, anyways, I'm going to back the Bearcats here. This is going to be a slaughter fest. Cincinnati, against their own conference, is easily the best team defensively. Their defense is so stout. Sauce Gardner, the best DB in college football. This is going to be one of those games where Fickle is going to have his boys so ready. He's going to say, oh, they want to rank y'all outside of the top 4? We're going to go out and hurt a bad Tulsa team. This Tulsa team 1-4 against the spread in their last 5. Listen, their defense is terrible. They're 132 teams in college football. They're ranked 102nd, man. This is going to be a show for Desmond Ridder and Jerome Ford to just march down the field and score points in bunches. I think this is going to be like a 35-point win.
One of the reasons I wanted to feature this game is because this is my best bet of the week, one of my best bets of the year at Cincinnati, minus 22.5. It's going to be a best bet on pickswise.com. Look for my write-up over there. But I'm telling you right now, I am loving this spread at minus 22.5. There are so many factors going for your money in this one. Teams respond. Group of 5 teams respond. Look at Western Michigan. Look at UCF. Teams respond when College Game Day comes to town. And not only that, it's such a good matchup for Cincinnati. Yes. The Tulsa defense is allowing 30.9 points per game, 396 yards per game.
Yes.
Cincinnati is only allowing 15.3 points per game, and Tulsa ranks 96th in points scored. Now, you've seen Cincinnati struggle in the last 2 weeks. Those games were on the road.
Yes.
Their last 2 games at home, they put up 52 against Temple and 56 against UCF. This Cincinnati team is going to roll on Saturday. I think this could easily be a 30-point win for the Bearcats. Minus 22.5, I think, is way too low. And I also think that a lot of that is for how they've looked in the past 2 weeks. But again, look at the numbers at home compared to the numbers on the road. They're monumental. They're going to be so up to play this game. Fickle knows what he's doing. They know that they have to come out here and impress. In the end, I don't think it's going to matter, but it matters to them. There's a lot of pride on the line here.
Absolutely. Pride games are really good. The next game we got on taps, I really am so excited for this game. Number 13, Auburn Tigers taking on the number 14, Texas A&M Aggies. Aggies are laying a 5.5 spot. I'll go ahead and take this away. I'm back in the Aggies here, Miles. Let me just back up a little bit. And I was blind to this in my Alabama ignorance. This Texas A&M team was good. Before the season, they had some QB issues that, they had to work through. Their defense needed to start tuning up. They needed to see how to use their weapons in Isaiah Spiller and Devin Achane. I'm going to back Texas A&M. I said this earlier. In the last 3 games they played, they are 3-0 against the spread. Wins against Alabama, where they put up 41 points. Win against Missouri, where they put 35 points. Win against South Carolina, where they put up 14 points. They've averaged over 420 yards and 40 points in those games is insane. I think that they finally found a way to get Isaiah Spiller and Achane involved collaboratively. A lot of times early in the season, what they were doing is they were featuring one game, featuring one the other game. No, they're using their two-headed monster. I think that Auburn's doing well this season. They're 6-2, right? They've dominated Texas A&M in this matchup, but it's a better defense for Texas A&M and arguably a better running attack than what Auburn has. And I don't think that this is going to come down to the quarterbacks. I think it's going to come down to the defense and the running game. So I'm backing the Aggies with 5.5, and they get this at College Station. Oh yeah, I like this a lot.
Yeah, I think it definitely comes down to the defense. It does not come down to the quarterbacks. I have to take the points here. I like Auburn plus 5.5. It almost feels too. It's just, for me, it's too many points. Whereas this is probably the best defense that A&M has played in weeks. You could argue since Bama, but Auburn's been playing some really good football. You mentioned only 2 losses this year. One was to Penn State. One was to Georgia. Bo Nix is actually playing out of his mind right now. I mean, he had over 300 total yards last week. It was against the Ole Miss defense. I get that, but big 31-20 win against Ole Miss last week in a game where also this Auburn defense shut down Matt Corral and a shorthanded Ole Miss offense, but still holding them to 20 points.
Yeah.
All that leads me to believe is that they're going to be able to play defense well enough in this one to keep it within 5.5. I've got a 21-17 win for A&M here. I think A&M definitely comes out with the victory. But on the other side, Zach Calzada for A&M, he's thrown an interception in each of the last 6 games. And
he just loves giving it away.
Bo Nix is actually limiting his turnovers right now. So I think to cover 5.5, I really only need one of those Calzada interceptions to flip the field one time because I think it's going to be a really defensive game. So I'll go ahead and take the points here. All right, let's go ahead and move over into a team we had in our rankings. Coming off a big win against Michigan, we got number 3, Michigan State, going at Purdue for a 3:30 kick. Michigan State coming in here as 3-point favorites. This seems like a trap. Does it seem like a trap? I don't know.
If it seems like a trap and it seems too easy, it is a trap. I am backing Purdue. But I can't just, as a good handicapper, I can't just say, it seems like a trap, so I gotta take the trap.
Sure.
I had to look for a reason why Purdue would win this game. They lost to Minnesota, but that's a pretty good Minnesota team. They beat Iowa. They lost to Wisconsin, but that's a good Wisconsin team. They beat Nebraska. We don't know what Nebraska is, but Nebraska's pretty good at home. One thing that Michigan State has struggled with all season is their pass defense. They're allowing over 300 yards through the air per game. This quarterback committee, I think they're going to run with Aiden O'Connell, is averaging 307 yards per game. And, this Purdue team is pretty good as a dog, covered in 10 of the last 13. I think that their defense is enough to hold down Michigan State. I don't think Michigan State's going to have one of those situations where Purdue's going to let the wind out of the sails. I think that when you watch that Michigan State game, there was a point when Harbaugh was holding on. He wasn't constantly attacking. That's not going to happen for the Boilermakers. This is going to be a 3:30 kick. If they start to get a lead and they start getting ahead, it's going to get out of hand. And it's going to be this part of the season for Michigan State where Mel Tucker and the fan base is going to be like, y'all, we cannot be upset about losing to Purdue. We were last place last year. This is a win for them, regardless of how many games they finish winning. Their total was set at 4 games, and it's totally fine. The only way that I think they win this game is if Walker has another 205-touchdown game, because they just can't stop anybody, and they're not good enough to get in shootouts. Michigan is not a good team offensively, and that's why Michigan State was able to come back.
Yeah, this kind of goes back to what we were saying about the committee, too, because if you dig into the stats for Michigan State, they're not good.
No.
What they're doing is they're finding ways to win these ball games.
Yeah.
But for the committee to rank them as highly as they have at number 3, it's just their criteria is all over the place. Now,
yes,
I'm gonna back the Spartans here to find a way to win because it's what they've done all year. But all I've got here is reasons why Purdue scares the hell out of me in this game. Purdue forced 4 interceptions against Iowa and then did it again against Nebraska. We're definitely going to see interceptions from Michigan State again in this one. Purdue, 3-2 in the West. They are right in the thick of a division race.
Yes.
And then on the other side, Michigan State, they are dead last in total defense in the Big Ten. So really, you could argue that anybody can stay with them. But all I keep thinking is when Wisconsin went into West Lafayette to play Purdue a couple weeks ago and pretty much rolled them. When I went ahead and backed Purdue in that one. And I just don't see Purdue coming away with a win here. You know how I feel about 3-point spreads. I see it as a pick 'em. If Michigan State wins by 3, I'll take the push. But I just see the Spartans, coming away with the victory.
Yeah, well, let's
letdown spot.
Let's talk about this though. I backed Wisconsin in that Wisconsin-Purdue game because Wisconsin's defense is elite. Michigan State's defense is nowhere near elite.
They're not.
That's why I'm backing Purdue.
And that could be the difference.
Yeah.
All right, let's go to the Big 12 where we have another team that we were speaking highly of, number 12 Baylor at TCU. Can we talk about our very good friend Gary Patterson for a second?
Oh man, rest in peace to his career. What a legend.
Friends of this podcast.
Yes.
We've been talking about our friend Gary Patterson for 5 years. Love that guy and what he did. He is the embodiment of what you do with a group of 5 programs.
Yes, 100%.
In the Conference USA, takes them to the Mountain West, makes them a power there. Takes them to the Big 12, makes them competitive there. But it finally comes crashing down. It comes to an end. So hats off to a great career in what he did for TCU. Unreal. I'm upset about the way that they let him go out. But hey, this is a business. But we've got Baylor and TCU here. We were talking about, how highly that I think of Baylor. I've got them in my top 10 here. This is another one where I'm going to take the road favorite. I'm taking Baylor here -6.5. Again, give Dave Aranda credit for what he's doing with this program right now because they are believing in themselves. You can say what you want about Texas, but they were just so impressive in that game last week. Now, keep in mind, this is the first road game for Baylor since they lost to Oklahoma State 24-14 a couple weeks ago. I think TCU keeps it close for a little bit. I think Baylor pulls away in the fourth. I like Baylor here by a touchdown.
Yeah, I like Baylor by a touchdown too. Like it's just a battle of good offense. Like you have a good offense, you have an okay offense from TCU, you have a good defense from Baylor, and an awful defense from TCU. I gotta just call a spade here. These two teams are going in opposite directions at this point of the season. Baylor sees that the playoff is not too far out of reach for them. They rack up some big wins and they could be there. 6-2 against the spread versus a 1-6-1 against the spread on the system. Listen, teams that I used to always be totally incorrect in my sentiment that I'm about to say, because I always thought that teams, every time they fired their coach, they rallied around the new coach and won. But no, teams that generally have a replacement coach in football, that first game is normally awful. And they only get the brakes beat off them. But look at USC. They got beat by an awful team their first game. It just happens. And I'm backing Baylor here. Better team, better offense. We're going to turn this program into a freaking quiet gym this year. Like, quietly. Big wins over BYU. That BYU win was huge.
Huge.
Because that's a good BYU team. Yeah. That win against Iowa State, huge. That comeback win against Texas says something about your program.
And TCU, 12 and 17 points in their last two games, and they were playing West Virginia and Kansas State. So there's nothing there that makes me think that they can cover 6.5 here, even at home.
Yeah. All right, guys. Well, right now I want to invite you guys to, if you're watching on YouTube, drop a comment below, press the like button, and subscribe to the podcast. You can follow me and Miles on Twitter. Miles is at Miles on Sports, and I'm at Mr. Brad Thomas, and the podcast is at What's the Spread _ Miles, let's go ahead and get into some NFL. I'll kick off the first game. We have the Tennessee Titans traveling to Los Angeles, taking on the Rams for Sunday Night Football. The Rams are an 8-point favorite. RIP Derrick Henry. RIP Tennessee Titans. I have Tennessee Titans to win their division, and I'm getting terrified because it is hard to replace a back like Derrick Henry. Derrick Henry is a 2,000-yard back, a man who is averaging over 170 yards per game. A team that, I said this once on one podcast where the Tennessee Titans have had a very banged-up offensive line, but when you have a guy who is 6'4", 240 pounds, and can run a 4.5 40, he makes up for a lot of the ineptness of your offensive line, a lot of the damage that your offensive line has taken. The Titans rely heavily on a play-action game. I do not think that they are talented enough defensively to keep up with the Los Angeles Rams. To stop the Los Angeles Rams enough where they're now limited offense is going to have to try to compare. The Rams are going to be under the lights, and with the addition of Von Miller, this defense is already scary. Their average margin of victory is 9.5 points. And guess what? This was one thing that really drew me to the -8. Before, teams would have to load the box. They would have to load the box against Derrick Henry. They're not going to have to load the box. I don't care if Adrian Peterson plays. I don't care if it's Jeremy McNichols. This is the fourth. This pass defense is ranked fourth. So they're not going to have to load the box. Now they can sit a little bit more in coverage for an already good pass defense. I like the 8 points here.
Yeah, for me, how many points is Derrick Henry worth, right? It looks like it's about 4 because I believe that the line was at 4 before the Derrick Henry news. And I know that Derrick Henry is the heart and soul of this team, but I can't get off the Titans bandwagon just yet, at least in their cover streak. They've covered in 4 straight games. I think 8 it's too many points for me to pass up here, even on Sunday night. Even on the road, I'm going to take the Titans +8. It's hard to replace it back like Derrick Henry. I get that. Tannehill is going to have to step up, and they're going to have to start finding some other playmakers. But I don't think that one running back, maybe quarterback, but I don't think a running back should be worth 4 points. It's too many points for me to pass up here. So I'm taking the Titans to keep this at least within a touchdown and taking the +8. They've covered 4 in a row. I'm all about hot teams, so I'll go for 5 straight here. All right. Let's go ahead and roll into the Denver Broncos at the Dallas Cowboys. The Cowboys are undefeated against the spread, 7-0. They are facing their toughest task, betting-wise, of the season as double-digit favorites here, -10. I will go ahead and start. Speaking of streaks, this is how I like to play the NFL, and I'm not going to apologize for it. I'm taking the Cowboys until they can't cover. Now, listen, I know that it's going to happen eventually where they're not going to cover a spread. But I still think that the Cowboys could definitely win this game by 14 or 15 points with a healthy Dak Prescott. Denver is 1-4 against the spread in their last 5 against teams over 500. And honestly, I don't think 10 is really that much, considering how well Dallas plays when they're at full strength. So I'll just keep riding this thing until the wheels fall off.
Dude, that's totally fair. That is totally fair because I'm on the exact same train as you. This is America's team, the highest bet team by the public, and I'm on there not even thinking twice. This is a Dallas team who's averaging 32 points per game. In the Dover rating, they're rated top 3 on offensive efficiency. They average 302 pass yards per game, 152 rush yards per game, have a two-headed monster in Zeke and Tony Pollard, and have more than enough wide receiver talent, and Dak's healthy. But on the Broncos side of the field, they're ready to cast stones at Teddy Two Gloves. They don't even want him. They were hyping him up the first start of the season, the first wins. And then they play teams with good records. And they get destroyed, only averaging 19 points per game. Their defense is not good enough to stop this Cowboys team. I think that the Cowboys are going to have their way with them. And it's going to be a fun party for all Cowboy fans because this is going to put them even closer to the playoffs, even closer to a Super Bowl championship.
And even closer to a 17-0 against the spread record.
Yes.
All right, love it, man. All right, let's go ahead and move on to one that I'm excited about, the Cleveland Browns at the Cincinnati Bengals. The Bengals are coming in here as 2.5-point favorites. Here's the thing. The NFL is betting the NFL, I feel like, is like sitting down at the blackjack table where you're going up and down. And it's like a stock market. Stocks are hot, stocks are low, up and down. Look at the Bengals. Now, I don't have this on record. I wish I had this on my Twitter, but I do have confirmation from those that I told. I said the Bengals were not going to cover last week. The Jets were going to find a way to cover. Now, I didn't think the Jets were going to win the but they end up winning. And the reason I say that is because don't be deterred by what you saw last week. I think that we get back to what we saw from the Bengals in the weeks previous. But I'm going by even more so, and I'm taking the Bengals, by the way. I'm going by even more so from what I saw from the Browns last week, which was an offense that is in utter turmoil. I mean, and listen, what's new, right? What is new?
What's new?
I picked the Ravens to win this division at the beginning of the year because I wanted to see it from the Browns before I believed it. And I just still, after all these years with Baker and all these weapons he has around him, I still don't see it. This is a borderline must-win game for the Browns. Definitely a very crucial matchup in this division for both teams. But I'm looking at 2.5. I'm looking at a pick 'em. I'm looking at a Bengals home win.
I'm backing the Bengals as well. The trends say back the Browns. Browns won 4-1 against spread in their last 4 road games. The Browns surprisingly are a top 5 offense, even though they look god awful. I just think that their top 5 offense is only an efficiency. It's not by actual output. So I think that with all of this drama, Odell Beckham talking trash about the whole organization, they don't know, if they could trust Baker. They do trust Baker. Screw that. One thing we know about the Bengals, they got caught looking ahead. They got caught overlooking their opponent against the Jets. Sure. They got Mike Whited. I think that the Bengals bounce back in a big way here, and they take the cover. We just need the win, I think, at this point. I don't think that it's going to be a 2-point game. I'm going to back the Bengals here. I've been a Bengals believer all season. I purposely didn't cover the Bengals game last week because I thought that with 98% of the money going on the Bengals that they were due for a not cover. Yeah. But Burrow's played great this year, and this team has turned it around.
Couldn't agree more. All right, let's go ahead and wrap it up, my man. We got the Los Angeles Chargers at the Philadelphia Eagles. I'm going to assume that Herbert plays. It looks like he should be on pace to. The Chargers are sitting here as 1.5-point favorites on the road. How you feeling about this one?
Dude, something is sketching me out about backing the Chargers, dude. They were at 3 points, and they're still just taking in so much public money. Like, what the heck? Now it's at 1.5. I checked it. I think some markets have it at 1. I'm backing the Eagles. I think the Eagles build off their win from last game. The Chargers, with Herbert, without Herbert, they are remind me of one of those teams who have a lot of success in hype, a lot of success that look at us, we've made it. But you can't crown a Super Bowl champion after week 3. You can't crown a Super Bowl champion after beating, now we see, a terrible Kansas City Chiefs team. We can't crown those. And I think the Eagles, they have a lot of work themselves, but they have the luxury of playing this game at home. They're going to have to protect Jalen Hurts. But one thing that's really good when you're going against like a Bosa or a good D-line is having a quarterback who's mobile. And that way a guy like a Bosa can't pin his head back and just go straight after you. He has to break down his feet. Makes him a little less effective. So I'm going to back the Eagles here. Both are about average against the spread. Both are about average statistically. The Eagles have a very underrated pass defense. It's top 5 pass defense, and I think that's gonna help us a lot here.
Yeah, I'm taking the Chargers here to get the win. I mean, the Eagles beat the Lions last week, big win, 44-6. But Jalen Hurts still was only 9-14 for 103 yards. Yes, he had a good day on the ground. He did, but listen, the Chargers are in a must-win situation. They're trying to avoid their third straight loss here, and again, it's another tough road game for them. They were just in Baltimore a couple weeks ago, and now they're having to travel across the East Coast to play Philly. But as long as Herbert can play, and I hope he can, I got the Chargers here come away with the win, and a win that they must have. I'm going to go with the better quarterback.
That's totally fair, Miles. Like I said, any day that I can talk football with you is a great day. Guys, I want to invite you to follow us on Twitter at What's the Spread _. Be sure to download this podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, however you get your podcast. We're going to have our next section with our special guest, Justin Bales, The Goal Line. Take care.
All right, welcome to The Goal Line. Today we have with us a friend of the podcast, DFS Karma Content Manager Justin Bales. Be sure to follow him at Bales S. Justin. My man, welcome into the show.
Thanks for having me again. I feel like I need to make some money back for the people. Last time I came, went 0-2.
Hey, it happens. Yeah, 2-0. Go ahead and tell us your first play. I see you have a game in Nevada. You have 2 underdog plays today, so let's do the first one.
Yeah, so I'm backing San Jose State as a 10-point underdog. It feels a little bit too big, but I feel like kind of the big thing here is that Nick Nash took over for Nick Starkel. I believe 5 games ago was when he made his first start. They're 3-2 and have an overtime loss in that period, so could very, very close to 4-1. The recent change, I guess, over the last 2 weeks with Nick Nash is that they've become more run-oriented. In his first 3 games, he had 23 carries for 99 yards. That's total overall. The last 2 weeks, up to 28 carries for 233 and 2 touchdowns. So it's kind of in a spot where Nash adds a little bit of unpredictability. He's a bit more versatile because he can also throw essentially as well as Starkel. I don't think he really has quite the arm talent, but he also doesn't turn the ball over as much. So kind of a plus in that region. And then just in terms of his rushing threat, Nevada has one of the premier pass rushes in essentially the entire NCAA. But how are they going to use that when they know at any point in time, if they overcommit, Nash is going to take off here? So that's kind of where I'm going. Whereas on the other side, Nevada, don't get me wrong, very good team, but they're a little more one-dimensional. They throw the ball nearly 70% of the time. San Jose State also ranks in the top 50 in yards allowed per pass attempt. And then they also rank in the top 35 in sack percentage. So it kind of feels like they're in a spot where if they can get them in second or third and long, they're going to be kind of in the best possible position where they know what Nevada wants to do. They're going to be able to get after the quarterback. And even though they have a potential NFL draftee, I guess, at Nevada, San Jose State's defensive line is one of the better ones in the entire NCAA. I guess I would also mention that you can consider the under in this game. I feel like both defenses are really going to stand out compared to the offenses. And obviously, if that's the case, I'll take the team that is getting 10 points.
10 points.
Situation. Yeah.
No, I agree with that. One thing I know about the San Jose State team is their defense is not to be questioned. And when you're getting 10 points for a team that has good defense, it's totally fair for me to back the 10 points.
Yeah, they'll keep it close.
What do you got for your next play?
So I'm backing Liberty, and by Liberty, I essentially mean Malik Willis. It feels more or less like his NFL showcase, right? Like this is the best game he's playing. If he doesn't play well, he could drop. And now with like Radler and all the essentially every quarterback in this class kind of face planning, it's very real that Malik Willis, assuming he performs well this Saturday, could be the number 1 overall pick. So when you kind of look at it like that, I mean, you kind of have to back the kid, assuming you believe in his talent, which I do. That feels like the type of situation where big time players come out and they perform at a big time level. And that doesn't necessarily mean that I think that Liberty upsets Ole Miss or anything. But again, they're getting nearly 10 points at 9.5. So all they have to do realistically is keep the game close. On top of it, both of the offenses are more run heavy. That's not necessarily because they love handing the ball off to the running backs. They don't, but they both have quarterbacks that are dual threats. So they're running the ball over 55% of the time each. And now it's important to keep in mind that Liberty hasn't really faced the competition of Ole Miss. I think that's relatively obvious. They did perform well against Syracuse when given the opportunity. But Liberty's defense is essentially better than Ole Miss's in every metric. I think that has a lot to do with the competition that they've played. But at the same time, they don't need to win the game. Like, we're not looking for Liberty as a big underdog to come out here and hit the money line. We just need to keep it close. So more or less a situation where I'm just backing an elite player in Malik Willis. I think that he's going to come out. He's going to show out against a defense that I don't believe is that good. And if that's the case, I don't think that Ole Miss hits the 10 points that they need to hit the spread here.
And Ole Miss, coming off that tough loss to Auburn, they're not an SEC game. This is one that could sneak up on them.
They have Texas A&M next week too. So it's like Liberty's kind of in the sweet spot where they're going to overlook them a little bit.
I'll go ahead and say this. I'll be rooting for you. I'm not backing Liberty. I'm not betting against Ole Miss because Ole Miss is Jekyll and Hyde when it comes to covering the spread. Games they cover, they look phenomenal. And then games like against Auburn, they look atrocious. But hey, I'm rooting for you.
No, that makes sense. I get it.
Hey, man, well, I appreciate you coming on for the short and sweet episode, a short and sweet segment of The Goal Line. Guys, be sure to follow Justin at Twitter on Bales S. Justin. Appreciate your time, and I wish you the best of luck.
Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Take care.